Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it is Friday in the Riv. And we've got a ton of stuff to talk about. But let's start with the fact that on the last show, we were talking about that building. Good evening, Alphonse. We talked about that $250,000 building that they wanted to rent. And thankfully, the city council shot it down, but I asked the question then, who owned the building, and we have allegedly gotten the answer. It is the owner of a local restaurant who's very close to Paul, who already has a building rented to the city for $250,000 for 5 years. In case you can't do the math, that's $1.25 million that he's going to make in 5 years. And the city and the taxpayers get to maintain that building. It's his building. He's making $250,000, and he doesn't even have to maintain it. Gave it to the city. What's the moral of that story? When you're pals with Paul, you get rich.
That's right.
Like being pals with Pelosi or pals with Joe Biden or pals with any rich, powerful somebody that's got the.
Do you remember what Ken Fiola said to the city council about the buildings down at the waterfront? That they're supposed to be 6, but most likely 7 stories tall.
Yeah.
A building that was approved for 50 units and 6 stories is now going before the Zoning Board of Appeals for 160 units and 7 stories to destroy the view of the waterfront. And we both know that the Zoning Board of Appeals is going to kiss the developer's ass because somebody's getting a friggin' envelope. Yeah. The envelopes keep flying around at the ZBA.
Oh, I'll tell you, it's crazy. I mean, and in this building, just think about this. If they would have approved that rental of that property with all the places we got in. And like I said, don't give me that stuff about it. And I heard that the director was very upset. Oh, you people are,
You don't care. She said to a city councilor, you don't care.
Yeah. So when you don't give them exactly what they want, well, maybe the city councilor does care about the fact that they're going to rent the building to somebody who's already going to make $1.25 million on a building that we have to maintain, the taxpayer has to maintain, and I don't agree with them allowing that. And he's very closely aligned with Coogan, and we know you get rich, your pockets get lined, you get a big job, you get a fat paycheck, you get your buildings rented. We know how this game is. Storage units are a big thing. I'm going to go back to the Carlton Viveris administration. A few people that were very well connected to Carlton began to build storage units all over the city. And mysteriously enough, every new business or anybody who came to Fall River was directed to those storage units, and they became very wealthy people. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Well, I got some waste for you to manage, Stevie. I know it's about time in September and November we take out the trash because, listen, the city council did the right thing by not approving this. But how about looking into why we're maintaining a building that somebody else is making nearly $1 million for and's got a locked-in contract with? Do we have any buildings that went out for bid? No, I don't think so. Yeah, well, they'll do it when they feel like it. They're waiting for a TIF. They're waiting for the TIFs, and but this is the whole thing. You're right. This is like it's like the mafia's running it, and it pays to be with Paul. You get buildings rented. We all know that friends of Paul, rented space for schools and made a lot of money, and. Why are we renting all this property? Why are we doing this? Why isn't there some way to figure out how we can turn a building into something for a multi-use facility? But this is the whole thing. The first question that popped into my mind was, who owns the building? One of Paul's friends, and it's true. But now I got to talk about. I got a video link, and somebody sent me a short excerpt. I guess that Carlos Caesar was interviewed by Fall River Reporter, and also he did a 3-minute get to know the candidate, which everybody I think does. I don't know if everybody's going to do it this time, but they all do it up at BCC. Introduce the candidate, which you just see a video of him saying, whatever. But I listened to a short clip. It was very interesting because he talked about the forensic audit. And as I said, CJ and I have been proponents for forensic audit since day one. Since the first day we went on the air, over 15 years ago, we've been talking about a forensic audit for the city of Fall River. I'm the only person that ever did a forensic audit in the city of Fall River on its health care. And we found all kinds of money. We found all kinds of violations of the law. And we got over $2 million plus interest back from them. This has been going on, and that was 1991, by the way, if you want to look it up. And it happened again in 2008. They were losing money. But I listened to part of that interview, and I mean, listen, Joe Good, I have not been a fan of Joe Goods in a very, very long time. She was not a reporter. She doesn't do her homework. She's a political hack. She's like the Washington Post. And, actually there's an article right now on the national line that the former editor of the National Post admitted that he totally blew the research on the COVID lab leak. Why? Because he listened to politicians. They were political rather than being and I think one of the questions that was asked was, how are you going to find the money? Well, the question was already answered. He said he's going to do a forensic audit. Then we'll know where all the money is. They also said, she asked him a question about, how are you going to, it was a clerical error when I guess he brought up the $1.5 million that they found overnight after that was my name. I gave it that nickname first, I think. But she said it was a clerical error. And listen, Carlos is not is not a professional debater. He's a regular guy. He knows how it is to work. And to me, that's what we need. We need people who actually have to feel the pain of these politicians, not get their building rented for $250,000 a year for 5 years and make them millionaires. What Carlos should have answered then, and I don't like to be a Monday morning quarterback, but I'm in on these numbers, and he did a very good job. From what I've heard so far, he did a very good job. And the thing is, a forensic audit is an absolute necessity. But when Joe Good said they made a clerical error, what he should have said to Joe Good is, with all due respect, Joe, how many meetings did you go to that we've seen clerical errors? We've seen 5 insurance accounts that were dormant for 25 years discovered. We've seen money that they didn't even know existed. They found that. We found that in our forensic audit. They testified that they didn't even know where the money was going. Under oath, they had no idea where the money's going. So you're going to actually try to get the mayor off the hook, Joe? I know you work for the Flanagan now. Now you cast off your robe of being a reporter, an ethical reporter who does her homework, and you became a shill. What kind of question was that? You try to cover for it. It was a clerical error. How many freaking clerical errors do we have in this city? In the last 6 years, it's been one giant clerical error. Now take it away, CJ.
Well, what's interesting is they asked Carlos about the DeVore school. There's been accusations that he owned the school, and all kinds of stuff. The school went up for bid since the city took it back. Nobody bid on it. But when the Flint Neighborhood Association had it, Carlos had a buyer who was going to put affordable housing in there. And as soon as Paul heard that, Paul turned around and ripped the building out from under him.
Wow, what a surprise. He said a horrible word. She works at his pot place. Or she did.
Right, or she did.
She didn't work for Flanagan, because she did. I'm not talking about her working for Flanagan as a reporter. She may have done that clandestinely. But she worked for Flanagan at the pot place. So, and Flanagan's with Chris. We know that.
That's what I wanted to know, Scott. Why are they bringing up the divorce school? Okay? The city said they were taking it back. They took it back. The Flint Neighborhood Association lost $5,000 on the building. Boom. That's it. Okay? They didn't get offered their money back. And now the building's wasting away. At least the Flint Neighborhood Association was doing some work on trying to get it back to where it should be. They were trying to make it a community center. But every time they applied for money from Community Preservation Act, you know that extra tax money you get hit for? They denied him. First, they said he had to get rid of the asbestos. So they got $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000, whatever it was, got rid of the asbestos. They were told they had to pay the water bill. They don't even have a water meter. That was just from the rainwater tax. This was all Paul's way of putting the jabs to Carlos. Retribution, retribution, retribution. And why they brought it up, we still don't know.
Well, we're not playing gotcha on this show, Eric. So number one, and secondly, they brought it up only in a negative context.
Right.
Nobody said what you said, CJ. Nobody said that they were going to build affordable housing in Coogan immediately. That was the catalyst for them to say, no, you're not going to set that precedent in Fall River. You're not going to show that that somebody can build affordable housing in this city, because we don't want it here. And that's the reality. Okay.
No, we want 160 market rate units on Duval Street.
And he didn't fight back. He did fight back. He actually hired Sam Sutter as a lawyer, and they fought it out a little bit. But, he's in the same position that most of us are. I'd like to sue BCC, so would CJ, but I don't have the money.
Right.
I mean, they're going to take this to the Supreme Court. They're going to make you pay through the nose. And it's when you can't, the adage you can't fight City Hall doesn't mean that you're wrong, because we were right and we'd win. But the fact is that you're going to, people can't afford to fight City Hall because they're fighting you with your own tax money. And they're going to drag it right to the Supreme Court. And you can't go to the SJC and you can't hire Louie, Dewey, and Screwy as a lawyer that'll work on contingency on a case that's going to go to the Supreme Court. You need a real lawyer.
That's right.
You need a real lawyer. That's the reality.
Hey, no jab. FJB says, no good is a disaster. No argument for me.
That's why she's not writing anymore for any viable newspaper.
Right.
It's like, but
and personally, I'm surprised.
From what I've heard. And the thing is that I like about his platform, I haven't seen basically the platform of anybody else.
That's
Coogan's got a record that's abysmal. So I don't need to see anything about Coogan. I've watched them destroy the city. I think he brought up about the $2 million shortfall, and I think he even asked Joe Good, could you run your house this way without knowing where all the money is? Well, then they asked him a question like, where are you going to find the money? Well, the first thing you got to do is know how much money you have. You may be able to find it right in our budget, because when you do a forensic audit by a real auditor, like we did, we knew where every single penny in the city of Fall River was in the healthcare system in 1991. We knew every account that had gone to. We knew every account it had migrated through. We knew every every transfer of every single dollar because we paid, and we paid huge money. Fire and police. I filed a grievance. The police came on as an amicus with us. They helped pay. And when we won, when we proved that they had not handled the money and the arbitrators award started, there was it's not in question that the city's books are in a total state of disarray. You know, not one other union pitched in. We asked them. Every one of your people, because of the work that we did, got 3 free months of Blue Cross and an $18 premium reduction for the remaining 9 months of that year to pay us our money back. Because that lawsuit didn't just affect fire and police. It affected every single person in the city of Fall River with health care. A bunch of school teachers, a bunch of DCM. And you know what they told us right there? We're going to take your money. We're going to take the benefit. You guys paid it. Tough shit. This is what you got when you got weak union leaders. They're going to go kiss the mayor's ass. They're not going to fight it. So, and they keep doing it. That's the problem. Carlos was right. They did it in 91, and we went back 5 years, and they did it every one of those 5 years. They did it. We found them doing it again in 08. They found five accounts that were dormant for insurance for 25 years. 25 years. They had money in a bank, and they didn't know. They said they didn't know they had it. And then in 2016, we found more money that had been given to the city for their health care, and it ended up in the city account. They said, okay, yeah, you're right. We're going to give you the money back. And I said, well, I sent a letter, and I still have the letter. I sent a letter to Mary Sahadi saying, I want to know exactly where that money, it was taken in by the city. It was a self-paying. Some people pay their own health care premium. It doesn't come out of their check because they're retired. And I said, but it went into city accounts. By law, it has to go directly into an employee account. I said, I want to know where it went. I want to know what happened to it, like we got in the forensic audit. You know what happened? It is now the year 2025. I wrote that letter in 2016. I still haven't gotten an answer. They have no freaking idea where the money goes. And when we had that forensic audit, the auditor and the treasurer of the city of Fall River admitted it under oath. When our attorney asked them, this $1 million transfer from account A to account B, what's account A? I don't know. What's account B? I don't know. And then the next question was to the treasurer and the auditor. So if I owned account B and you were told by the city to transfer it from A into B, you would have given me $1 million in my account. And the answer to that question was, I guess so. So talk about malfeasance. How are we going to move first responders? I like the idea of what? I don't know. I don't know what. Easy. We do what they promised to do. How many years ago now? CJ, you can remind me. When they went in front of council and said they're all going into the fire department.
That was the beginning of Paul's term.
Yeah. All right. 6 years ago, they went in front of the thing. They got the early retirement. They got to retire at 55, even though that was made for police, fire, and corrections. And other people have been in, judges, and politicians jumped on board so they could retire earlier. Firefighters and police retire early because of the stress of their job, and most people can't drag hose or chase down suspects at 65 years old. So they promised to put them in a fire department. So just think about this. How many people have we got in EMS? All the people that are driving in EMS. We got all kinds of supervisors driving around in Dodge Chargers, all kinds of brand new cars. When I was on the ambulance, and I was one of the first people to ride on an ambulance for when we got EMS, because I was still a firefighter at the time, and I was a EMT. But I made lieutenant shortly thereafter, and I didn't work on it again. We went to a call with one ambulance. Now you got all kinds of supervisors there. You know, if we needed a help and assist, we called for a piece of fire apparatus to help us with a heavy lift and a 3-decker. All those people would now be firefighters / EMTs, paramedics. So now the fire department would have all that manpower. They would be well over the standard where they could hire these people and then run the EMS portion. And then if somebody in EMS went on vacation, you could swing somebody off the trucks and balance manpower. I suggested fire-based EMS 25, 30 years ago. They don't want to hear it because that's where they hide all their friends. You don't have to take a test to get in EMS. You don't have to take a test to make chief in EMS. You don't have to take a test to make captain or lieutenant. They bestow the rank on you. And you don't have to get on a civil service list to get on the job. So this is the problem. Yeah, you're right, Gibby. A lot of people wanted to do that. They do that down the Cape. Virtually, of course, the Cape has got to, I'm not going to mix apples and oranges. The Cape is completely different. They very rarely have structure flyers down there. About 90% of their runs on all the Cape departments, and I know a lot of guys. I used to know a lot of guys. I know all the presidents of every local in the state. But the guys down the Cape, 90% of their runs are medical runs. So being a firefighter / paramedic is very important there because they need even fire apparatus there. Because if they don't have a million ambulances, just think about that. We got a bunch of fire trucks and we got a bunch of ambulances. But down at the Cape, if they got their 2 ambulances tied up and they get an emergency, cardiac arrest, everybody on those trucks is a paramedic or an EMT.
And remember, when they graduate the fire academy now, they've also got certification as EMTs.
Yeah.
So it just goes that they should go together. But people like Beth would not have a job because she won't be a firefighter.
Yeah, well, bottom line was...
And her family legacy of sucking off the city dole will end.
Well, when they made that promise in front of the city council, I went on record as saying that's never going to happen.
That's right.
A lie. They'll never do this because half of the EMS department would not go through the fire academy.
That's right.
They do not want to go into burning buildings, and some of them wouldn't be physically capable of getting through the fire academy now. And that was a con of the city, and the city council has never, ever called them. When they're talking about renting buildings and stuff, they just keep getting bigger and bigger. And when I see a supervisor in EMS riding around in a Dodge Charger, do you know how much those things cost? They cost nearly $100,000 today.
But that's the problem. EMS is an enterprise account. They keep all their money. And like Beth has said, we can spend it as we see fit.
No, you can't. That's not being fiduciarily responsible.
That's
I hate
right.
to tell her this, but she has an obligation. Instead of spending $100,000 on a car, buy a car from a fleet, get a fleet car. It'll get you from point A to B, and let's take some of that enterprise money and funnel it back into things that are going to help the city and the people and the citizens.
Firefighter salaries.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Tax abatements.
Remember,
I don't think they should have an enterprise account. I think their revenue should be rolled into the general fund. And the reason why I say that is because they just signed a contract with St. Anne's Hospital to provide non-emergency transportation from the hospital to nursing homes, etc., etc. Okay? Guess what? Guess what? Doesn't work that way. If I was in St. Anne's Hospital, or even Charlton, which I'll never go to, but if I was in St. Anne's Hospital and they said we have to transport you to another hospital, I would tell them anyone but Fall River EMS. Not because I don't trust Fall River EMS. Not because I don't like Fall River EMS. It's the principle of the matter. Beth has turned around and said, this is my business. She had to be reminded by a city councilor. This is not a business. It's a service. and it should never be looked at as a business.
And a service that in many communities does not exist. They have private ambulance services
That's
in
right.
most of the places in the country. And Providence has had fire-based EMS for, I don't know, 70 years, 80 years, as long as, back to the time in the dinosaur era when I was on the fire department, Providence had fire-based EMS. I knew the president of Firefighters Association over there. They, Stevie Day. They had fire-based EMS. And you're like, this is a disgrace. They should, they don't get to spend it any way they want on fancy cars. Well, Jason went to jail for trying to, skim money to go buy fancy stuff. Well, maybe they should be going to jail because they're not being fiduciaries, buying $75,000, $100,000 cars to drive around it. And why do they have to go to a call now anyway? I'd like to I'd like to see that explanation. I was on the ambulance. We had a cardiac arrest. My first day on the ambulance, we had 2 cardiac arrests. I had to go there. And in those days, there was no paramedics. There were just EMTs. And you know that EMTs can't dispense things.
Right.
Because you're a professional. We used to have to, on a cardiac arrest, it was running out of Candaeus at the time. And we used to have to stop at St. Anne's Hospital to pick up an ER nurse in case any meds had to be given. And you know that because you're, obviously that's your field.
Yep.
So, and the same thing in the other district. In the other district, if there was something, when I was in the other district as a chief, I wasn't an EMT any longer. They had a guy with his arm stuck in a machine at one of the plants, one of the dye houses, and they actually called for Car 2. I was the chief, and that's when I was downtown. I wasn't in the South End. I was in Car 2 down at the Central Station on Bedford Street. They actually radioed us for that call to pick up a trauma nurse at Charlton, because the guy had basically had his arm nearly amputated in there, and they were going to probably have to do a field amputation, and they needed a trauma nurse. Why you need 3 supervisors, 6 trucks, and a call now, I don't know. Maybe they're just bored doing their job in the office. I don't know. But I know one thing. Nobody is ever going to convince me that fire-based EMS isn't more efficient, more effective, and a hell of a lot costly, and less costly. Because I'll tell you what, you don't get to spend it any way you want. You're supposed to spend it wisely and for the taxpayer. And driving around in fancy cars is not spending it. And it's a job. It's your job. And this shows the lack of accountability. But like I said, let's look at the political end. This is where they can dump people. This is the MBTA. This is the the lottery commission. That's where all the politicians' relatives who can't get a job, that's where they stick them. And they get nice, rich jobs. So in Paul's world, you're a friend. If you don't have a building to rent me and I can make you a millionaire, I'll give you a job somewhere, City Hall. And I did hear, speaking of that, somebody said that has Kilby officially gone to the housing authority?
Not yet, as far as I know.
As far as I know either, but somebody said that. Well, we do know that a prediction of Spindle City Straight Talk, I think you made the prediction. Our new city administrator is none other than
Mike Dion.
Huh?
Mike Dion.
But remember, we said it here first. We said it here for long before the rumor was out. We said,
yeah, but that was a rumor. Remember, that was a rumor, so we can't be, we're not accurate. Remember, people, in Fall River, you can take rumors almost as gospel, especially where we get them from. Okay? Especially where we get them from. Our rumors are 99.9% accurate. Very rarely Very rarely are they not. And I want to remind people that Michael Dion took on the city administrator role once before. And he was a miserable failure at it.
Well, that's almost a prerequisite. He can't do the job. Let's look at what happened with the CFO, the interim CFO. I want somebody to explain to me, if you ran a real business in private industry and you had somebody doing a job about dealing with numbers and she was not very good at it to the point where you got to get rid of her, do you then keep her on and give her old job as a consultant and an analyst for the new CFO? She just proved she can't do the numbers.
That's right.
What is she gonna do? What kind of insight is she gonna give somebody? It's like nobody ever gets fired. They just get moved around.
I know.
This is why
and that's the sad part about it.
We need to charge to the polls, people. It's time to get to the polls.
And remember,
there's no way to change this.
And remember, people, Fall River has a residency requirement. If you take a job in Fall River, unless you were hired before a certain date, or you were working here before a certain date, and your grandfathered in, you must establish residency. Chief Financial Officer Bridget, never established residency. Opke, never established residency.
Most of them don't live in Florida.
Right, most of them don't have residency. And you know what I was told? We can't enforce it because the unions won't agree to it. Well, you know what I say? F you, unions. Here's what we'll do. When you come up for a contract, suck wind, because I'm not going to negotiate with you.
Well, not like it hasn't been done
Menino
before.
did it for 5
Menino
years.
did that.
We'll do it for 5 years.
Menino did it in Boston. Well, I don't know how you picked them.
Fatima, can I ask you a question? Why would Boomer be your pick? He can't even manage his family. Everything is an excuse. He can't get out of his house because he can't find a babysitter. I think it's admirable that he puts his family first. I think that it's wonderful. Okay? But as mayor, he's not going to be able to say, I can't come in today because I don't have a babysitter.
Well, the thing
and what's going to do? Bring him into the mayor's office? Have the city clerk watch them?
Well, Fatima, the thing that's got me is I haven't heard a word about anybody's platform.
Right.
Carlos's. I mean, Carlos has gone out there and said forensic audit. He's gonna meet the 1710 standard for Manning. He's gonna, do things. He made that 3-minute thing. We'll have to watch that to see what he says. But he's been out there with a platform, with saying this is what I'm going to do. And I truly believe, and I've said that long before this election, and anybody who was declared for the election, I'm going to vote for the lesser of two evils because it's my philosophy. But I will not have any confidence in any mayor that doesn't do a forensic audit of this entire city.
That's right.
Before we even start. And I haven't heard a word about any kind of plan from Boomer Amaral.
Nothing.
And listen, I respect veterans. I'm a veteran. But you can't run on vote for me because I'm a veteran. Vote for me because I'm going to do something to help try to turn this city around, to fix the city. I haven't heard a word from any candidate. Paul Coogan is the guy that broke the city, so he can shut up because we know what he's done. So he can just shut up and go away and hopefully not get elected. But I haven't heard one candidate, with the exception of Carlos, that has given a concrete platform to a degree. Like, I'm going to start with a forensic audit, which makes sense. If you go into the market with a cart and fill it up with $600 worth of groceries, and then you get there and you open up your wallet and you got a $20 bill, they're going to go, hey, put everything back, pal. Well, that's what the city does. They buy all the groceries, we get to pay. We paid for the health care, but we're $2 million short, so we got to pay again. They had the money to pay it. but they blew it. But are there any consequences for them? No. Yeah, well, everybody supports small business, but the thing is, how do we get small business in here?
Well, and Fatima, the reason why nobody put their hat in the ring, and I'll tell you from experience, okay? Why didn't anyone else put in for mayor? Because the voters are stupid. The voters are stupid. And all you got to do is look at these campaign kickoffs. Okay? Look at these campaign kickoffs. Polls next week. Free hot dogs and hamburgers. Hey, buy it with a chow mein sandwich. That's how it works. Feed them and they vote for you. That's the sad part about it. Feed them and they vote for you.
Well, listen, Fatima, you're right. There are not a lot of people running, but my philosophy is I know one counselor who's earned my vote, and that is Michelle Dion. And everybody else, I'm going to vote for new people. I don't care. I don't care how bad they are. They can't be any worse than what we got. These people have been directly responsible for our budget nearly doubling.
30 years.
Remember,
30
for 6
years.
years Coogan's been in. He fundamentally did this with the approval of the sitting city council.
That's right.
Let's face it. Brad Kilby's going to go to the housing authority, boost up his personal pension by thousands and thousands of dollars because he's been a part-time worker. And then he's going to retire as a full-time worker after he puts a few years into the housing authority. This is what they do. They're all sellouts. He's been totally useless his entire council career. All he does is spend money, whether we got it or not. He doesn't care. Like the $1 million for the fields at Durfee when we were millions of dollars in the hole.
And then we destroyed the field.
Yeah. Oh, the kids. Well, listen, the kids can play on a field that maybe you have to put a few landscapers on there. You don't need to. Well, Sean's a guy that makes a lot of great points, but never votes the right way. 9 out of 10 times, he will pontificate about all the right things, and then he votes to give the mayor whatever the hell he wants.
That's right.
So
that's why I can't.
I've got a problem with that. So I don't care. Look, my friends are my friends off the clock, but if you don't do your job, you don't get my support. I'm not going to spend a taxpayer's money foolishly. I don't believe in it. They won't get my support, whether I like them or not. Because if you did your job on a department, you were good. If you didn't do your job, you got written up, friend, foe, or anything. Because it is not a club. The city government is a club now. It's a cabal, the Coogan cabal. But where you work is a job, and in order to be efficient, you have to demand accountability. That means that if your friends are screwing off, you got to kick them in the ass. And if they do something wrong, you've got to. No, we'd like you to come on the show, actually, and all the candidates on the show.
Not only that, but I said this on the show on Monday, I said it on Wednesday, and I'll say it again today. It is not my responsibility to go to you, the candidate. It is your responsibility to come to me. My number isn't private. My address isn't private. Everyone knows how to get a hold of me, but I'm not going to hear, come to my house. Call me on the phone.
Maybe to watch the football game, but
yeah.
Remember, if you get elected, you will put your hand up and swear an oath that in the Constitution it says you are the people's representative, their substitute and agent, and answerable to them at all times. You have to be You have to take it to the people. You are a representative of the people. The people don't have to go to you. You have to go to the people. I have to
That's
agree
right.
with CJ. That's the way it's supposed to go. You want
And
my
that's the
vote?
one thing
Tell me what
missing from this campaign.
what your plan is. Tell me what you're going to do. I mean, it's easy to say, well, the city's a mess. Well, everybody can say that, but what are you going to do? Like I said, so far, there's only one person I've seen that from the get-go has talked about an audit of the city. And as someone who knows quite a bit about the three most important cost items in the city of Fall River, the retirement system, the healthcare system, and collective bargaining, and all the millions that have been wasted.
You know,
And we told Paul Coogan 6 years ago that we would not have the money this year, that they would be $2 million short. I didn't know the exact amount, but I said,
the other thing is,
you're going to piss it away.
what should candidates be doing right now? They should be out knocking on doors. They should be out making phone calls. They should be not having people do it for them. I know you need help. I've been there. I've done it 3 times. I've knocked on doors, thousands of doors. And the only way I got the people in the South End to come out and vote for me was to feed them. And once I started providing food to them, my vote count went up. That's how it works.
Well, don't start trying to pick that apart. I know it's not a plan. It's part of a very plan, and it's the most critical part of a plan.
That's right.
Because as someone who has beat this city numerous times in arbitrations and in court, I can tell you one thing. If you don't understand that this city has done nothing but bullshit its way through for the last 20 years, we haven't heard a solid number in that council chamber since we had Jim Smith, and before him, Alan Sylvia and Bob Connors. Those guys came down with hard numbers. It's part of a plan, and it's the most important part of a plan, because I can tell you, not from theory. When I sued this city in 91, you can go and ask Neil Rossman to give you a copy. You'll have to charge it because it's in his vault, because it's been in it since 91, of the every word said in that arbitration, when city officials said they had no idea where the money was going, that they were backdating checks, that they never did an actual audit. They did reconsiderations and reconciliations and it's still going on. It went on again in 08. It's gone on in 16. It still goes on. Nobody, when they get in front of that council, knows where the freaking money is. You can't run your house that way. Can you go to the market? Can you go to the market and buy shit with $20 and buy $600 of stuff? No, you can't. That's the most important part, because you know something? We found a lot of money just in healthcare. What happens if you do an audit and you find out that money's been misspent? That lays your plan out, Boomer. That's how your plan gets laid out. You find out we've been blowing money over here when it should have been blown. We misspent money over there in a forensic audit. They spent money illegally because of this, and you stop that, you will free up millions of dollars. We freed up $2 million in 1991. That's a lot of money in 91. They took over $2 million of our money, and we got it back with interest. That is the beginning. That's the beginning of everything. I've been saying this for 40 years. But nobody gets in there and they play Chinese checkers with the money. Right. They're like the little freaking Dutch boy in the dike, sticking their finger in a dike. You got to bring your platform to the people, and you let the chips fall where they may.
And remember, another part of the plan has got to be the fact that when you put out a budget, you've got to stick with it. Less than a month after this budget was passed, EMS came asking for $250,000. Why wasn't it in the budget? She knew she was going to need it. Is she that stupid? Does she not have any common sense? But it happens all the time. Doesn't happen in Newton. Doesn't happen in Weymouth.
No, it definitely doesn't happen.
Transfer his money every week, every 2 weeks. We're transferring money to make the budget work. And I've heard from a politician who was mayor who said, well, the budget's a living, breathing thing. It can't. No, it doesn't. It does because nobody budgets properly.
No, and you can't deficit spend except the federal government. And let me tell you something. All the plans that everybody puts forth are totally useless unless you have a forensic audit. Because number one, you can't say, I'm going to fund the fire department, I'm going to go find the funds. How? Taxing the people more? That's not the best method. How about finding all the waste and fraud that's going on in this city? And I can tell you, when I got done in 91, I was not there for a criminal audit. I was there to free up healthcare money. I knew they had misappropriated and basically embezzled from the employees. I proved that. But in that, there were actionable criminal offenses by the financial team of Fall River. And did they do anything about it? No. Those people stayed on the payroll for another decade and got pay raises. This is the problem. We need a mayor that's going to get in there and say, first, forensic audit. I want when we hired Ernst & Young, one of the best accounting firms in the country, and we paid through the nose. But it was like, okay, but you got to spend money to make money. We found out where all the money was to the penny. They had no recourse. They had to admit it. They threw up their hands. They admitted they never really did an audit. They admitted that they backdated checks. They admitted they had no idea where the money was going from account this one. Well, what's that account? We don't know. What's that? Well, we were just told to move the money, and we just moved the money. So number one, all your plans have to be basically guidelines of what you're going to do. You're going to improve public safety. You're going to improve this. But first of all, you got to find out how much money we got to start with. How bad are we in the hole? What departments have misspent money? And right there, you might free up millions of dollars. Or you might find out we're so catastrophically in debt that we have to do some serious cutting in this city. Not for public safety, obviously, because we have to protect the city. But we have to do some serious things. Look at it. Look at on the state. That dip we got at the state, that governor, she's talking about furloughs, period, rotational days off. And yet on one hand, then she's giving the illegals everything she can give them. And now after this election, you mark my words, in the state house, they're going to impose a tax that if you drive over 8,000 miles, you're going to get taxed. If you sell your house, you're going to have to give the state 4% of what you pay when you want to get out of this shithole state.
That's right. That's right.
This is what they're doing. This is what the people you elect to go to Boston.
This is what Carol Fiola
do?
And Alan
her
husband
are pushing. A 50% discount on all the land around the Wall Street.
That's right.
But it's not. The ethics committee that we created said it wasn't unethical. Bullshit. And like I said, the guy who rented who they were going to rent this building from is already going to make $1 million. 5 years at $250,000, do the math. And we have to pay. I want to know how we ever signed a contract, just like the collective bargaining agreements. Who gives a contract that they have unlimited comp days and they have to stay on the payroll for 2 years after they retire, a year or two? But, I'm a numbers guy. And I'm a numbers guy for contracts because I have to justify the cost of the contracts. I'm a numbers guy in a retirement board because we have to fund the retirement system. I'm a numbers guy for the healthcare because I've been negotiating the healthcare.
I agree, Mike.
I know one thing. This city doesn't know where the money is. I went into a meeting one time. They said they didn't have the money for the stamps. So stamps. They wanted the employees to take money out of our trust fund to give them money for stamps. And I went, no, buy your own stamps. We did give them nearly $1 million to save the Canadian drug plan. It saves us nearly $80 million since we've had it for 21 years. We gave them a loan for that. It was in my report on the transition team to Coogan. But this is the thing. I like they're all going to do this, and we're going to promote this, and we're going to promote that. First, you got to find out how much money you get. You can't live No human being can live without first knowing how much money they have to spend, what they can buy, what they can't buy, what they can afford, and prioritize all those things based on their budget. The city of Fall River, like most of the government, has not done that since Christ was a corporal.
Mario, you're right. The voters' rights were demolished by the House and the Senate when they passed legislation by 73% of the vote, more than the cannabis law passed. More than the cannabis law passed. Democracy is dead in Massachusetts.
Oh,
and the Democrats are the ones killing it.
Well, Mario, nice to see you, but I will tell you, we can't have an audit of the city of Fall River if the mayor demands it. The governor can't tell them don't do an audit. So we can do an audit. Annalise, that's right. We need to make this into an Athens, Tennessee. We got to get people to the polls. Look, to me, it's like, you know who's doing a job for you. You know that Colin is out there. You know that Kevin's out there on a school committee, but they're being suppressed. Actually, I heard there was ACLU's contacted about their actions, and
I filed the complaint.
Okay.
I have no problem. I filed the complaint with the ACLU, and I've been advised to file a complaint with the MCAD because the mayor and the city clerk will not read into the record letters from citizens unless they prove their handicap. The American with Disabilities Act does not provide that proof of disability be provided. So once again, Fall River violates the law.
Again. Well, I guess they knew my version of War and Peace was ultimately get to them, because I was going to cite all the legal precedents, all the constitutional precedents that they do in that Nazi regime that they call a school committee. Because when you have a mayor, ex officio chairman of the school committee, threatening to throw people out because he doesn't like what they say, even in spite of the fact that I know he doesn't know a lot about numbers, he's not good, he's only a vice principal, he doesn't know anything about pot. But the fact is, there's also a First Amendment of the Constitution and a Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court finding that you have to allow people a voice, even if you don't like what they say. And they were very explicit. I'm going to pull that one for the next show, and I'll read the excerpts from that in the next thing. Yeah, you're right, Stevie. He's more like yeah. So yeah, I love Democrats because Newsom is on the TV waving his arms. I don't know what that thing is now. He's got to make motions like this. I don't know what this is. It's like somebody should tie his hands together. But he's talking about, well, we're going to do what they do. Well, you already do what they do. In California, 40% of the vote for congressional seats went Republican, yet they only have 17% of the seats. So you're already gerrymandering. So, but you, the great defenders of democracy, your plan, Newsom, is you think what they're doing is wrong, so you do it. I guess when you were growing up in your nice rich house and then going to the French Laundry to have dinner, Daddy didn't tell you that two wrongs don't make a right. So if it's so wrong, why have all you Democrats made gerrymandering into an art form? Illinois, the most gerrymandered state. Massachusetts, the entire state is blue. There's not a district in here that's a Republican district. You may get some local offices, some state reps, but that's why they can never take over the state. That's why we are where we are. But he does have nice hair, Stevie. You know, I'm a little jealous, but I can't have. I'm glad that actually I got to do this because I had really curly hair, and if I let it grow, I look more like Clarabelle because it's like, yeah, you know. And but yeah, these people, it's do as I say, not as I do. We're the defenders of democracy, but if you guys can't gerrymander, we gerrymander. Look at the states with the most gerrymandering: Massachusetts, New York, California, Wisconsin, all the blue states. The Republicans were late to the party, but they're good. You know, I don't believe in gerrymandering. I read that article about it's a disgrace, but it is a fact that it's legal, but it's not supposed to be done to give you power. It's supposed to be done to balance the vote among various voting groups and ethnicities. Not supposed to be done just to give you a vote. And you look at Illinois, they got that little, like, there's a Republican area up here, and they got this little tiny snake that goes up 3/4 of the way up to the state and right into the big cities that are near in that area. So the big cities can outvote the rural areas that are Republican. I mean, these people are shameless. They're such hypocrites. They're just shameless. But do what I do, not as I say. We're going to do that. The Democrats, defender of democracy, say if you do something that's undemocratic, well, Newsom's thing is we're going to do it too. So I guess in Newsom's world, two wrongs make a right. But in the Democrat world, they have one basic fundamental credo. We will get power by any means necessary and keep it.
Seems like every mayoral election is making it worse. Well, I want to thank you all for watching. Thank you, Boomer, for chiming in. I'm sure it was because of a comment I made or Chip made. But I want to thank you all for watching, and remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great day.